That, my friends, was a common Bengals W. And as we end the 2023 season, the Bengals W's are more common than the L's. And that's really all I can ask for, considering the direction in which the season was going. The Cincinnati Bengals were up 31-0 against the Browns backups, kids, and their charity cases, etc., yada, yada. But the Bengals ended up winning 31-14, finishing with a 9-8 season, a winning season, third straight winning season. And listen, when you consider the fact that the Browns have had that many winning seasons in like 25 years, can't take it for granted. Had you told me that when Joe Burrow just tore his wrist apart and was out for the season, that the Bengals would finish with a winning record, I would have been very happy. If you would have told me at the beginning of the season that Joe Burrow would be healthy for 6 games this year and you'd end up with 9 wins, I would have been ecstatic. But I'm not. We'll talk more about that in the season look back. So this was my first full year doing Common Bengals W. I did a couple at the end of 2022, but this is my first full season. I'm a season ticket holder. It was something that I wanted to do to force days off from work and the like. But man, it's become something that I really enjoy doing just for fun. I'm still very much learning about football, but there is an awful lot to get into just from this game. And throughout the offseason, I'm going to have a bunch of shows as well, because I'm not going to be here like Locked on Bengals every single day, as I see my friend Charles in the chat. Chime in if you're here watching. I see hundreds of you watching right now, probably because of my Twitter. But throughout the offseason, I'm going to have a season look back. We will take a look at the quarterback position, which is Joe Burrow, Jake Browning, AJ McCarron. What's going to go on there? We'll have a look at the wide receivers, because Jamar Chase, new deal. T. Higgins, new deal. Boyd may be gone. Some emerging names. We're going to look at tight ends, which has become an increasingly more important position for the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll look at the offensive line, which is not improving year over year the way that it should be with the amount of money that's being spent on it. We're going to look at running backs, because there's going to be a lot of question marks there. And of course, we're going to talk a little bit about that today. We'll probably do a show about some of the injuries between, Awuzie that was coming off of his injury, the DJ Reader injury, the Joe Burrow injury, things like that. We'll do a draft review. We might do, as Charles said, a mock draft as well. We'll look back at the 2023 draft. We're going to look at free agency, roster prediction, things like that. We'll do all kinds of specials. Anytime there's a big signing, like when there was an Orlando Brown signing, I went ahead and did a live stream. So I would expect to see a show every, 2 to 4 weeks here in the off season. And man, there's plenty to talk about right now. So let's go ahead and talk about this win. Browning and McCarron. So Browning said, I think I proved that I am capable of being an NFL starter. Listen, I don't necessarily disagree with that in some senses. Like, I feel like he is one of the 35 to 40 best quarterbacks around. How will that change when a new crop gets drafted in? I don't know. But he's also a guy who today threw 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's thrown an awful lot of picks. He gets sacked a lot. But all things considered, this is a guy who helped lead the Bengals to a winning season when it looked like that was lost. Completely lost. There isn't much more that we can say about Jake Browning now that we haven't said before. I did really like that he got Yoshi Voss way more involved. 2 touchdowns for Yoshi Voss on the season, because Yoshi Voss is a guy that's probably going to step up with, his 15 receptions, but 4 touchdowns. He's probably a guy that's going to end up stepping up. Again, that is a situation that we're going to attack more in the offseason. But the Bengals drafted this season heavy on defense and high on upside. Because if you can hit on some of these later round picks like a Yoshi Voss, and listen, if we get Trenton Irwin production out of Yoshi Voss, well, that's a winner of a pick, right? Charlie Jones is a guy who got it done on the ground, receiving, but I don't know if his future is as a return man based on some of the decisions that we saw on the punts today. I don't know if that necessarily is his forte. McCarron. I'm so glad McCarron got in the game. 3 of 4. He did fine. Based on what we saw out of AJ McCarron, he was a completely serviceable, third string quarterback, right? Like he did what he needed to do. He was like 4 of 5, and he should have thrown a touchdown, but T. Higgins pushed off. So I was happy to see AJ McCarron back in track. Not a lot of necessarily. Somebody who did have an effect on this game was Joe Mixon. I have a lot to say about Joe Mixon because he's a Bengals great in the sense of longevity, and he got a lot of incentives today. He picked up a lot of incentives from his rushing yardage and all that. He crossed the 1,000 yard mark. Very happy about that. I feel like he probably would have been able to maybe last year had he played all the games. He would have in 2020 had he played all the games. He got to 4 yards a carry, which is something that he's only done half of his season. It seems like Joe Mixon magically finds lanes when there's an incentive. Am I wrong here? Like his numbers this year were pretty well on par with last year. But if you remember, if you eliminate that one game last year, his numbers are way below pedestrian. He's a great catching back. Really, really great. You can count on him to catch over 80% of the things thrown his way. He got into the end zone that way as well today. Tied for his career high receiving touchdowns. Got into the end zone, nine rushing touchdowns, second most of the season. He got into the end zone a lot better this year than he did last year, even though the numbers are similar in fewer games, if that makes sense, because that one game just saw him blow up. Last year, he was very close to maybe losing that starting spot to Samaje Perine. And then he went off. And then this year, we're at the end of the season when, quite frankly, instead of finding lanes or running over people, he would hit the line of scrimmage and then just fall over. We're going to talk more about the running backs in the future, but I was glad to see him have this kind of game. He needed it. He needed it to bring his averages up. He needed to bring his numbers up. My God, 1,000 yards again. And we're talking 7 years into the league. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he restructures his deal again. If he wants to stay as a Bengal, like he claims, I don't doubt that maybe he restructures his deal again. But Nick has a good point. We have to get more explosive in the running back room. I think the O-line just doesn't block well in the running game. That is also true. Like he had a run of 40-something yards, and it was his longest since 2018. Joe Mixon is not the blow past your line and secondary running back. And we haven't had that. Samaje Perine wasn't that. Maybe Charlie Jones, or not Charlie Jones, maybe Chase is that a little bit, but certainly not Mixon. And Mixon's not going to magically become that next year. And honestly, I think that's what the Bengals need sometimes. They do need that type of running back. But Mixon played great today. Again, he found lanes. He fought for yardage. It's just not something that we've seen a lot out of him the last 2 years, especially. 2021, we did. We did see a lot of that out of him. And that was his best year. He was very dominant. Got that big contract, and all of a sudden, well, he's reworked it this year. We'll see if he reworks it next year. There will definitely be some question marks regarding that. The defense. So, boy, if this ain't the Bengals defense, right? Play amazing at parts, and then all of a sudden you give up 2 touchdowns late in the game in a blowout to the same guy. Oh, man. Logan Wilson, great interception. Jordan Battle proved he belonged in as a starter. He continues to prove it. That makes me very happy to see that Battle is a guy that seems like they can rely on him because they drafted for the future. They drafted so they didn't have to spend money on a lot of their defense over the next couple of years because they did spend it on Hubbard. They did spend it on Reeder at the time. They did spend it on Logan Wilson and Jermaine Pratt. But Jordan Battle looks like a guy that can play the safety position. Can he play the safety position as well as Jesse Bates? Well, I doubt it. I doubt it. And knowing what we know now, keeping Jesse Bates, regardless of how expensive it was, compared to some of the other signings and money things that were made, listen, if you can pass on Awuzie, if you can cut Awuzie and keep Jesse Bates, you do that, knowing now. And you probably get into the playoffs if you have Jesse Bates. That's how close the Bengals were, even with a 9-win team, to getting into the playoffs. We'll go over the full look back in the future, but there were at least 2 games that I feel like Jesse Bates could have single-handedly changed the direction of and got the Bengals from 9 wins to 11 wins. Now, also, something you have to consider, if they change the result of 2 games earlier in the season, there's a very good chance that the Browns are playing at full strength today, and this might not be a win. So maybe he adds a net of 1 win, but Ryan says, your voice sounds a hell of a lot better than last night. Listen, buddy, the other night I hopped on a SmackDown stream, and I've got a little bit of a cough right now. Like, I'm not sick, but something just like popped in my throat, and I still feel a pain right here. And I've had some thyroid issues that I've talked about in the past, but it was scary. I was afraid, like, I didn't know if I had like an esophageal tear or something like that, or something with my thyroid happened. I didn't know. Cody says, at least you have your Sundays free again. I'm worried for the Lions. They have to play the Rams, seeing what Stafford can do, and it scares me. I don't want my Sundays free. But ultimately, like, I'll see people that are like, oh man, so sorry about the Bengals. It's entertainment, man. Almost everybody that's here knows what I do for a day job. And you also probably know I keep a pretty psychotic schedule as a result of that. And this was important to my mental health. Football was. Whether it be fantasy football or just the Bengals stuff, it was important to my mental health that I force a day off and that I have something like this. So what I never want it to do is to become a chore or work or something that depresses me. Like, I might get a little bummed out, but ultimately, man, I'm watching football. That's it. That's why, like, I've mentioned this before too. I had somebody say, oh, well, since you're doing coverage of the Bengals, do you want to get into the press box? And I'm like, hell no, I don't want in the press box. That is work, man. That is work. Tim says, with a 9-8 record this season, is it a good sign that they are better than what their record showed due to injuries? I think that they are. I mean, okay, I'll go through it now. I'll look through the Bengals schedule now. Of course, they should have won the Texans game. There is no excuse for them having lost the Texans game. It was just nuts. They should have beat the Ravens week 2. That should have happened too. So there's 2 wins right there. I feel like they could have beat the Steelers. Could. And with Joe Burrow, I think they do. So I would say about 3 wins. And then this Browns game, I'm not willing to say that they would have won that with Burrow or not, because Myles Garrett just owns the Bengals. So I'm willing to give them a net of 2. I think that they were in actuality about an 11-win team this year. And unfortunately, due to injuries and some bad calls and some bad decisions, they didn't end up winning that. I do think that they would have beaten the Chiefs with Joe Burrow as well. So 11 or 12 wins for sure. I'm already excited to do the offseason stuff. Very, very excited. Punting's still a problem. They still got to do something about the punting unit there. And special teams in general, there are some issues there. The late game defense was very frustrating. It was good to see Trey Hendrickson go in there. He's not going to lead the league in sacks, but buddy, Trey Hendrickson has been one of the greatest signings in the history of the Cincinnati Bengals. That guy is what you want. He's going to be 30 next year, and I hope he is a Bengal for the rest of his career. This guy rules. 17 sacks. 17 sacks. I'm interested to see how many sacks they had all of last year. I'm going to look that up because I don't remember them like having a ton of them last year. They had 30 last year. Impressive. 30 last year, and Trey Hendrickson has 17 his self this year. They had 40, I think 42, 43 this year. That's incredible. That is incredible. Logan Wilson getting stuff done today too. 27, he'll be 28 next year. Jermaine Pratt, same position. Dax Hill hopefully will get better. Mike Hilton is just steady. That guy is steady. Jordan Battle, very promising. Awuzie probably gone. Sam Hubbard, he's going to be around. Nick Scott, gone. Cam Taylor-Britt, looking good. BJ Hill, I would imagine he'll still be around. Miles Murphy's going to have to emerge for sure. There are some people like Joseph Asai that I think are going to get more snaps next year. But for some reason this year, the Cincinnati Bengals could not get it done defensively. And you're going to hear pundits, and it's going to drive me nuts. They're going to be like, that Bengals defense, Lou Anarumo. Listen, Lou Anarumo probably is not going to get any head coaching interviews this year because of how bad the Bengals defense was throughout this year. It was always the miracle play in the end zone, the miracle play in the red zone, or the miracle play in field goal range that they made happen. And hats off to the Bengals. What I love about the Bengals is they play until they give up the touchdown. But it's those opening drives, those opening snaps of the drive where you're allowing 10, 12, 13 yards over the middle, 6, 7, 8-yard runs that were killing the Cincinnati Bengals. I feel like, one, Nick Scott was really, really bad. Really bad. The interior defensive line is probably going to get a lot of attention to it. I'm thinking they probably got to sign a free agent. I don't even know what they're going to do with DJ Reader now that he's got that major injury. That's going to be tough. I'll tell you what else is tough. The AFC North. I can't even be mad at the Browns, man. Like, listen, I'm glad it ain't Deshaun Watson in the playoffs. I'd rather it be Joe Flacco. I love that story. And Deshaun Watson's a pervert. But all four teams with a winning record. I don't know if it's the first time in the NFL since the 30s or just there wasn't an AFC North all that time, but it's like the first time in like 90 years that everybody has finished with an above 500 record in the division. And the Bengals would be in the playoffs if they were in the NFC. Those are the breaks. I mean, part of me does wish that, you just had the best 50 or however many teams would it be. It wouldn't be 16, it'd be 14 teams, right? Yeah. I think. Yeah. 14 teams. I wish it was just the best 14 teams, but that's handy for me right now, right? I don't give a damn. I saw people saying, oh, you beat our backups, big deal. I don't care if it's a Make-A-Wish kids team. I'll take the W. I'll take the win. Thank you. I'll take the win. Oh, man. Glad the rookies got snaps as well, but the Cincinnati Bengals season is over. I was a season ticket holder this year. So I signed up just before last season because as the Super Bowl thing ramped up, I was like, okay, I want season tickets. And I'm very fortunate to be at a place now for the first time in my life to where I can afford such a thing. And I really needed it to force a day off, but I got on the wait list, and then after the season, I was one of those that could be added, and I got my seats. I was up against one of the guardrails, so I didn't have to get up for anybody. That was kind of cool. But let me tell you, if you're ever looking to be a season ticket holder, especially the Bengals, the parking pass is worth the money itself. When you don't have a parking pass, you are in a garage or a lot, or you're gridlocked, especially if you're in a parking garage that is not the one underneath Great American Ballpark. You are in that parking garage for a good 30 to 40 minutes after the game. At least when you're in CRG underneath the stadium, you pop right out, or at least my route. I'll share sort of an embarrassing story. First game of the year last year, I had a panic attack because I'm not used to driving in major cities, which you would think that I would be used to by now. But this is also a thing where I'm driving there. I drove to Cincinnati probably 15, 16 times this season between everything. And, I sort of overcame that as well. So that was something that helped me an awful lot as well, learning to drive in that terrible city to drive in, Cincinnati. But I had fun this season. I got to share some nice memories with some good friends. Got to go to a game with a couple different friends. But like as I'm looking at it, the Bengals, they lost against the Ravens. But I'm looking at the games that they won. They won LA, the night game. Seahawks, that was a fun one to watch. They beat the Bills. That was a blast to watch in prime time. They should have beat the Texans, but that was an entertaining game for sure. Beat the Colts. That was wonderful. The Vikings was one of the most fun games I've ever been to in my life. And they beat the Browns. So I got to be present for 6 Bengals wins this year. I was pretty happy about that. Scott Burris says, I was a Browns ticket holder from 99 to 08. I agree on the parking pass. I don't know if it's constructed like that for every team, but it certainly seems so in Ohio, Scott. And Cody's talking about parking events are mental. Yeah, that's why I always try, if I'm going to an event, I try my best to stay within walking distance of a venue or anything like that. But, guys, it was a common Bengals W. The Bengals have a winning season. We are going to be back. I'm going to do stuff all throughout the offseason. I would love to have like some fellow wrestling people, like Lord Crew, Zachary Wentz, Sammy Callahan, Angelo Dawkins, people like that on as well, just to talk shop, things like that. But yeah. Very excited about next season already. Excited for some upcoming streams, but it's a bummer. The Bengals didn't make the playoffs, but I appreciate you all being here with me because this show and football in general has meant an awful lot to me. I'm scaling back my social media on the wrestling end. It's going to be mainly just news stuff because, oh boy, lots of wild shit going on over there. But this stuff has been very important to me. So thank you all so much. Until next time, we're out.